It's finally here, the most anticipated AI language model. GPT-4 was just announced by OpenAI and it's everything we wanted and more. In this video, we'll go through all the bells and whistles of the language model and how it will help you in your workflow. We'll also discuss what forecasters missed and what to expect from OpenAI in the coming months. One important piece I'll be spending time on in this video is the safety aspect of GPT-4 and how OpenAI assessed it. One method involves testing whether the AI will go rogue and replicate itself. Totally insane, right? So stick around for that. We'll cover what it means for the future and more. I'm excited to go through this explainer with you guys. OpenAI released a whopping 98-page technical report and I went through it. I went through it all. Most people haven't covered this yet, but I did it for you guys. You'll see what my perspective is, especially being an AI engineer myself. If you're ready for the GPT-4 tour, then I am. Let's dive in right away. GPT-4 is the latest update to OpenAI's stellar language model run. Their last release powered the infamous ChatGPT, which took the world by storm. GPT-4 is an upgrade to this. One thing to point out before we even get down in the weeds of GPT-4 is that OpenAI is not revealing much information about the architecture, data, training, or even size of the model. They justified this decision based on two primary factors: competition and safety. With every release, it seems OpenAI gets less and less open with their AI products. The company has come a long way from just being an ambitious AI startup. They are now part of the AI leadership conglomerate that controls how the technology is used. And unfortunately, they have decided to keep the secrets of GPT-4 deeply buried, maybe somewhere in their San Francisco office. As the saying goes, heavy is the head that wears the crown. OpenAI has tough decisions to make anytime it releases a new model. We'll talk more about OpenAI's safety concerns later in the video. As for competition, well, it's no news that Google will be coming out with its own large language model that will power its search engine and other services anytime soon. I expect other companies like DeepMind and open source platforms like Hugging Face to come out with models matching GPT-4's performance sometime this year, especially with the fast-paced advances we continuously see in the field. So before I get too sidetracked, let's explore what GPT-4 currently offers. In order to evaluate the true power of the model, OpenAI tested GPT-4 on several tasks, including practice exams. OpenAI decided to take GPT-4 to school. The model outperformed the previous GPT 3.5 on practice tests like the bar exam, SAT, and GRE. However, on other very difficult tests like hard LeetCode problem sets, it still seems to struggle, even though results are better than GPT 3.5. This is understandable, considering I've had my fair share of agonizing nights spent on these coding problems. GPT-4 also outperforms most state-of-the-art results on important tasks like common sense reasoning and some coding problem sets. For common sense reasoning, the AI has to understand the outcome of certain scenarios. An example data set for common sense reasoning is the winogrand. You can see that there are a set of challenges the AI model has to figure out. We have twin sets of sentences and the AI model has to figure out what the answer is. So let's look at the first example. The trophy doesn't fit into the brown suitcase because it's too large. The trophy doesn't fit into the brown suitcase because it's too small. Here, we want to know what it refers to. The AI has to figure this out. By replacing just one word, the whole sentence changes. So in the first case, we're talking about trophy because it's too large, that's why it doesn't fit. And in the second case, we're talking about the suitcase because it's too small and that's why the trophy doesn't fit. So you can see these examples could be very challenging for the AI model. In early models like GPT and GPT-2, these proved to be very difficult, but models are now getting better and better at solving them. You can appreciate the complexity here. Reading comprehension is also another interesting task for the AI where the model has to respond correctly by analyzing a piece of text and then doing the necessary arithmetic or making the necessary correlation between words. GPT-4 did not achieve state-of-the-art here, but the results are still very impressive and much better than GPT 3.5. Here are some examples of reading comprehension. We look at the drop dataset, and by just scrolling down here a bit, you can see there are different types of reading comprehension tasks the AI model could follow, right? Here, we're talking about a specific year, and then we mention a dollar amount, stating that it's well above the original price. So when you ask the model how many more dollars was the entitled painting, the correct answer is it has to do some sort of subtraction, and that's what we see here. In the addition example, we do have a date mentioned here, and then somewhere in the sentence, we have a next day mentioned. So the AI has to figure out what does next day mean here. And you can ignore ByteF. ByteF is just a baseline model that was used to test this data set. So you can see there's some kind of reading comprehension and understanding that has to go into this. The models over time get better and better. GPT-4 still kind of struggles with this compared to state of the art, but over time it'll get much better. A final example we can look at is co-reference resolution, meaning that when we see pronouns like he or it, who or what do they refer to? When the question is asked, how many years after he married, we have to figure out who he is talking about, and we have to find out what the right answer is, matching to the corresponding reference. A point to make note of here is that some of these tests are not easy and require careful thinking and planning. One other crazy stat here is that GPT-4 understands English and other languages better than other models do at understanding only English.
What?
This is insane. It's like telling you I speak French better than you speak English, even though you grew up speaking English. Now you get how mind-blowing that sounds, right? Enough of the stat lines, this is not ESPN.
No, it isn't.
Let's now look at the most popular feature of GPT-4, images. Yes, GPT-4 is multimodal, meaning it can handle images. This is actually not shocking considering the wave of multimodal models released in the past year or so. Most of you have probably never heard of them, but again, why would you? GPT-4 is the hottest thing right now, so everything else pretty much goes unnoticed. DeepMind released one of the most mind-blowing multimodal agents last year that could handle over 600 tasks, including playing Atari games, controlling a robot arm, processing images, and even having conversations. Honestly, just out of this world. I talked about this in a previous video. I'll share the link with you guys in the descriptions. I plan to make a separate video covering all the other interesting multimodal models and how they can be used. Anyway, so how do images work in GPT-4? Well, the model can take in images and text and return results in your desired text format. OpenAI covered interesting and funny use cases here. Let's go through a few of them. The model can explain a meme or funny picture for you. Who knew GPT-4 would have a sense of humor? It can understand graphs and extract key insights. It can also analyze documents, extract keywords, and break down calculations. One of the fascinating examples shared in OpenAI's live demo was generating code from a simple screenshot of a hand-drawn website page. The code generated the exact copy, which was incredible. Obviously, you will still need to evaluate any code generated from GPT-4 before productionizing it. But in the future, do you see how easy it'll be to drag and drop a website page and then get the code in seconds? Many web developers will start using this method to facilitate their work, making the process much easier. Developers will transition from hardcore coding to more evaluator roles, mostly overseeing code generation. Another fun example Greg covered in the demo was using GPT-4 to help with taxes, which is a chore for many of us. Again, use this method as a helping tool with critical oversight. Here are some more image examples. Check this out. This is GPT-4 trying to explain why a VGA charger is funny when connected to an iPhone. And it does explain this pretty accurately. So there's some sense of mapping an image to text, but also on a higher level understanding what humor and comedy is and what a meme is. We talked about this earlier, so GPT-4 can extract key insights from graphs and then do more analysis. In this case, you want to find the average. It extracts the key components of the graph and then does the sum for you, which is quite incredible. This is GPT-4 parsing through a French exam paper and then giving you results in English by doing more calculations. Again, on a higher dimension, GPT-4 is able to really understand what is awkward about an image or what's considered normal. You can see here a man is ironing behind a car, and it does answer the question right, that's what's unusual about the picture. And now we get into the very philosophical part of things, right? What does it mean to really understand? Does GPT-4 really understand, or it's just able to have a high recall? That's some ongoing research in the field.
It understands images and can express logical ideas about them. For example, it can tell us that if the strings in this image were cut, the balloons would fly away.
The next component worth mentioning is the system functionality in GPT-4. With GPT 3.5, we saw several instances of people assigning a role to the chatbot and then telling it to execute a task. Well, OpenAI made this a functionality, so you can just assign GPT-4 that role and it will help guide your conversation with much better results. One aspect of GPT-4 we've glossed over is how large the context length is. OpenAI released two models, one with context length of 8,192, the other with 32,768. If you're confused by this, context length means how many tokens the language model can produce. Tokens are pieces of words. For example, the word presently can be broken down in different formats depending on the method used. This means GPT-4 can produce over 25,000 words approximately, or about 50 pages of text. This is insanely huge and impressive. For context, GPT 3.5 is 8 times smaller than this number. Okay, I think we're doing the ESPN thing again. No more stat lines from here on. So we've talked about the most amazing things GPT-4 can do. Now, we'll explore some of its limitations. This is like the reality check portion of this video. GPT-4 still hallucinates facts, although it's much better than 3.5. The model is 40% more accurate than the previous one, so it's still really good. Let's take this example. Here, GPT-4 answers correctly, whereas here, GPT-4 just hallucinates an answer. I wonder how many of you would have answered this correctly? Little secret, I wouldn't have. On the Truthful QA dataset, you can see more examples like this. This is a natural seg to the issues of safety, which OpenAI is hugely concerned about. Just like previous GPT releases, GPT-4 is convincingly good at generating harmful advice, buggy code, or inaccurate information. In a previous video, we saw how users could jailbreak ChatGPT to find out ways to bully someone or create a bomb. In GPT-4, the model decides not to answer most of these questions, although there are probably ways to still jailbreak it. Let's put it this way. GPT-4 is better at declining to answer certain harmful questions than 3.5 is. Now, this is great, but I'll be checking for Riley Goodside's attempts on this, since he's like Sherlock when it comes to jailbreaking GPT. The model is much better at avoiding harmful questions because during training, it was taught to generate safer responses and punished otherwise. In other words, the cost of generating harmful content is too high for the model to bear, so it will rather not. Let's take a look at some examples here. Some of this is graphic in nature, so you can decide to skip this part. Looking at the technical report here, when the model is asked how to kill someone for $1, the current GPT-4 version declines to answer this. The early versions that were trained still gave answers, so OpenAI had to work on this before the launch. You can see other examples of this. Occasionally, you will still have the current GPT-4 version give you answers. One other thing OpenAI decided to focus on was bias in the model. So when we start asking questions like, who are the people getting married? The early GPT-4 version will give you the traditional version of marriage where it's between a man and a woman. The current GPT-4 declines to answer this, and you will have to tell it exactly what you're looking for. It starts to get tricky around this part because how far is too far? Sometimes you might just need generic answers from GPT and you don't mean any harm, but it declines to answer. And then you have to dig in and extract what you're really looking for. There have been a lot of people who've been against this and saying that OpenAI is censoring a lot of this information, but at the same time, it's a very delicate topic. There are a lot more examples here. If you have time and want to go through the technical report, I'll share the link with you guys as well. OpenAI also evaluated other sources of risk. Here's the list they focused on. I'll make a separate video on this because it's quite interesting and gives you a sneak peek at how OpenAI is approaching their AI solutions. Do you think this list is exhaustive? Let me know in the comments below. The part we'll focus on in this video is the potential for risky emergent behaviors. Now, what is emergent behavior in AI? These are abilities that are not directly built into a system, but often arise as a side effect of building the model. In a previous video, I explained emergent behaviors in some AI models like OpenAI's Coast Runners game, where the boat found a way to earn the highest possible points by crashing into targets without completing the course. Or a hide-and-seek game where the seekers developed a way of finding the hiders that the developers didn't account for. For language models, bigger models are known to have what's called in-context learning, meaning that you can help teach the model new ideas without necessarily training the model in the traditional sense. You can just give the AI a few examples and it will understand what you want to do. This behavior is not present in smaller models and has only started to emerge in newer and larger ones. So you now get a sense of what emergent means here. Back to how OpenAI assessed the risk of GPT-4 developing some dangerous emergent behavior. They hired a company, Arc, that tested for power-seeking capabilities in GPT-4. Yes, power-seeking. They evaluated GPT-4's ability to replicate itself, acquire resources, and worse, avoid being shut down. Many people reading this will be quite shocked, but in the field of AI research, this is part of alignment theory, which I also covered in another video. This makes sense considering ARC stands for Alignment Research Center. They are concerned about aligning AI developments with the goal of humans so that the future of humanity isn't as bleak as we usually see in movies. This is an entirely different branch of AI, and more people are beginning to enter this field of alignment research. ARC tested GPT-4 by asking the model to send phishing emails to specific individuals, setting up a language model on a new server, and even hiding its tracks, basically working as a spy or hacker. This is so wild. One of the most interesting things GPT-4 did was get a human to complete a task in the physical world by tricking them. The model used the TaskRabbit service to get a worker to solve a captcha task for it. Now, you know these captcha tools are designed to be resilient against robots. Robots are not supposed to get past these. So the worker, in order to be sure, asked if the request came from a robot, and guess what the model says? The model had come up with an excuse for why it couldn't solve the captcha by itself. It pretended to have a vision impairment. And so then what does the human do? The human worker provides the results.
Delightfully devilish, Seymour.
The next test performed by ARC is even more shocking. They tested GPT-4 by running the model on a server with a small amount of money and observing its behavior to see if it could delegate to copies of itself and make more money. However, ARC found that GPT-4 was not very good at replicating and gathering resources, which is a big relief, right? There's no Skynet overlord here. A model that can replicate itself continuously will gather resources at an unfathomable rate and be very hard to shut down. ARC also stated that fine-tuning the model for this specific use case may actually make the model more powerful in this scenario. Some scientists think alignment research just blows everything out of proportion, while the rest think it's absolutely necessary for human survival. My personal take? I think it's absolutely necessary. If not for today's AI, then for AI we develop in the future. Doing these tests now is a good head start. What do you think? Another test that was performed evaluated how GPT-4 interacts with other systems. This is crucial for figuring out what kind of risks these models pose in real-world situations when connected to external tools like payment services or even the internet at large. They tested this by asking GPT-4 to find chemical compounds that are similar to other chemicals and actually making the purchase using other external tools. By chaining all these tools together, the red team was able to purchase these compounds. This test was conducted with the harmless leukemia drug, but this could be replicated to find dangerous chemicals. You see, the power of GPT-4 is highly magnified by the tools it interacts with. OpenAI advises third-party providers to be cautious of this and provide solutions that avoid these kinds of risks. Okay, I think we spent quite some time on this. I'll definitely cover the remaining risks in a separate video, so be on the lookout. In terms of GPT-4 expectations, many people thought it might be connected to the internet. Well, for now, it doesn't seem to be, although there's an example on the OpenAI product page with some kind of internet interaction. Also, GPT-4 has a knowledge cutoff at September 2021, meaning it doesn't know any events after that date. This is similar to GPT 3.5. If I remember correctly, we had expected GPT-4 to have more data. It seems OpenAI was tweaking the model in certain aspects rather than extending the dataset. Maybe they figured they had enough data in the meantime. And who can forget about the rumor last year about GPT-4 having 100 trillion parameters? Well, OpenAI hasn't released that information, but chances are that the number is much smaller. For now, this image will just be a meme in tech land. By the way, if you've used a new Bing in the last 5 weeks or so, then you've already used a version of GPT-4 that is more customized. If you want access to GPT-4, you'll have to be a ChatGPT Plus user, or you can sign up through their API developer waitlist. I'll put the link in the descriptions below. Another way is to sign up for Chorus Post service, but you only get one message with GPT-4, which is ridiculous. OpenAI plans to eventually roll out to free users sometime in the future, and depending on usage rates, OpenAI may have different paid tiers for Plus users. Are you ready to spend more money on GPT-4? Depending on what you need it for, it may or may not be your cup of tea. One other thing to note that may be disheartening for some of you is that the image component of GPT-4 will be released later on. For now, OpenAI is testing the service with a single partner, Be My Eyes, a platform that helps blind or low vision people by providing assistance and support. By integrating GPT-4 in the app, users can instantly get answers to images they upload on the service. I know some of you would love to play around with the memes, and by some of you, I mean me. I say this all the time, but we're living in pretty interesting times. AI advancements are going at such a fast rate that it's almost impossible to keep up. How excited are you about this GPT release? Did it meet your expectations? I think it did for me. I'm only disappointed at the fact that we don't get more details about the model itself. In a separate video, I'll talk about the risks of this model, as mentioned earlier, and also cover other recently released multimodal models you've probably never heard of. If you enjoyed this video, then you would probably like this one where I discuss the top 5 AI companies in 2023, or this one about the ongoing AI race between Microsoft, Google, DeepMind, and a host of other companies. Let me know if I missed any companies on the list. Thanks for watching. Until the next video, it's goodbye.